What's up guys, Jeff Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com. Take a look at this picture for me and tell me, do you look like either one of these people? If you do, well, we've got our work cut out for us. But guess what? You're in a good place because I've got a 22-day plan that's going to kickstart you and get you on the right path to having a better backside, stronger looking glutes. And coming from a realm of athletics, I will tell you this, it is important, not just important, critical that an athlete has a well-developed set of glutes because they're the powerhouse, the engine that drives high-level performance. Well, ask not what I can do for you, ask what you can do for yourself. Actually, we're going to do this together because I'm going to lay out a step-by-step plan, as I said, every single day for 22 days, exactly what you have to do, removing all the guesswork so you can get this done and get it right. You ready? Let's start breaking down what you're going to do day by day. All right, so in all fairness, I think we should start with two important caveats just to make sure we have all of our bases covered. If you look in the mirror and this is what you see, then you really actually need to add an extra 0 or 2 to the 22 days in order to get this looking right. Because what you have here is a body fat accumulation issue that is based in poor nutrition at its roots. There's no ways around it, guys. You're gonna have to figure out a way to eat much better than you are right now to drop your body fat levels down to even see what you're working with. And of course, while you're doing that, you can always be training, but it brings us to our second caveat, and that is if you're attempting to build up your glutes right now, but you are not squatting and deadlifting and they're not part of your training at all, I would recommend you start there. Give it a fair shot. Some people still can't do it even after doing that, and this is gonna be perfect for you, or if you're just looking for something to change it up, this is gonna be exactly what you wanted. But I would say if you're looking for a plan where we incorporate squats and deadlifts, I have a free push-pull legs that I just put up here. You can find it by clicking this link up here or by clicking this link at the end of the video. With that being said, let's start breaking down the plan now for those that are looking for above and beyond. All right, so with all of our 22-day plans, we start with a schedule. I'm gonna make this really simple for you to follow. We've got day 1 through day 22. And on both day 1 and day 22, we're gonna do a simple test. It's just the mirror test. You're gonna take a look at what you're looking like right now and make your own assessment. Do you like what you see? Is it sagging? Is it flat? Does it look a little bit, I don't know, dumpy from behind? Or maybe have a confidant or a friend of yours who will be willing to take a picture and give you some feedback. Whatever it is, just make sure you don't let those leak out. At the end here though, we're gonna look for improvement. On day 22, come back and compare. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna build up that backside of yours, we're gonna improve the glutes by following a training plan that includes a lot of strength training. Because we know that if we can build the glutes up, we can do a better job of improving their appearance. And we're gonna hit them in two different ways, in a glute-focused day and a hamstring-focused glute day. You might be thinking, why are we even focusing on hamstrings? Because the secondary function of the hamstrings is to extend the hip, which is going to impact the glutes directly. And thinking that the hamstring's job is simply to bend the knee is actually a flaw. I'll cover it in a different video, but in function, the hamstrings actually just succumb to gravity to bend the knee. We want to focus on what they do in terms of working with the glutes to really drive better looking glutes. So we're going to break it down in those 2 training days, and we're going to simply alternate them throughout the training days on every even day. So on days 2 and 4, you're gonna have your first of 2 glute-focused and hamstring-focused strength training workouts. On days 6 and 8, you're gonna come in with the second version of the glute-focused and hamstring-focused workouts. From there, you're gonna simply continue to alternate these all the way down until you've exhausted the remaining even days in our 22-day calendar. Now, what do you do on the days in between? Either you take a day off, which I'm only gonna recommend if you're feeling fatigued, or you add in the corrective work, the all-important corrective work. See, I mentioned before that people that just do squats and deadlifts sometimes don't get the results that they're looking for. A lot of times that has to do with simply training in one plane of motion, the sagittal plane. This is not going to cut it when you want maximum glute development. You have to involve the other planes that the glutes prefer to work in, which is the transverse and the frontal plane. So in these days, we're going to focus on the smaller but yet still important muscles of the hip and glutes that are going to help to drive the overall appearance and performance. And we're going to simply alternate 2 versions of our corrective exercises on days 3, 5, 7, 9, all the way until we've reached our last empty spot. And remember, if at any time you're feeling a little bit extra fatigue, you can simply utilize one of these days as an off day. So in terms of commitments and what I expect of you, very little in the way of equipment. Some dumbbells, something to step up on, your own body weight, and a barbell ideally, or you can simply swap those out for dumbbells as well. In terms of time commitment, no more than 20 minutes is what it's going to take to get the job done here on any given training day. Now, if you are training at the same time and you have leg training as part of what you're doing, which you should, I would set that aside for now. Focus on this as your leg training. Your quads are still going to get worked through some of the exercise selections that we're using to work them alongside the glutes in an indirect way. No stone left unturned here, guys. I've got you covered. Let's start breaking down the workouts day by day. All right, so let's start with those glute dominant days, the ones that are scheduled for days 2 and day 6, and then repeated throughout the remainder of the calendar here. We're going to start here with our activation drills. And this is, again, some of the stuff that people don't do. They go right into glute work and they have something called glute amnesia. They don't even have an ability to really connect with the muscle itself. And I'm sure you could do the test yourself. If you were to stand up right now and simply try to push one leg back behind you and then push the other one, really trying to contract your glutes, it's going to feel different right versus left on almost 99% of you, because we don't have a good foundational connection with our glutes in the first place, which oftentimes leads to a lack of development. So if we start with some activation drills, we do the following: 30 seconds each of, in this case, our toe down or toe stab hip lift, and 30 seconds of our toe up hip lift. And again, we're going to do this on each side, so you're looking at 2 minutes of committed work just to try to engage the glute medius, the hip abductors, to get those glutes a little bit more alert as to what's coming next. And then we start with our basic foundational exercise, and here it's going to be the barbell hip thrust. And when I mentioned the glute-driven exercises, when you can bend the knees and sort of take the hamstrings into this knee flex position, then the glutes do the majority of the hip extension work. And this is the best exercise for doing it. It's the first instance where I said you could use a barbell here ideally, but if you don't have it, you can simply rest a couple dumbbells on your thighs and do the same exercise. 3 to 4 sets of 10 to 12 is what we're looking for here. We move into the second exercise here, and this one's done for time. This is called the long leg march. And again, we're really driving hip extension by getting up as high as we can, then trying to keep it there and hold the glutes up high while we lift one leg off the ground. It becomes challenging, I understand, but it's something we could work into. If you can't really extend your legs that far out, you can always shorten them a little bit, but you're doing 3 sets of 1 minute apiece. And then we come into that quad exercise that I mentioned before. How do we continue to give some stimulation to the quads while still working the backside? The step up is an amazing exercise to do just that, but we preload it. And you preload it by simply leaning forward a little bit. As we angle our body forward, we preload the glutes as they activate to sort of counterbalance and prevent excessive motion in the forward direction. So we can feel it right away just by doing that. And then we perform our step ups from there. 2 to 3 sets of 10 on each leg, making sure to get all the way up, drive the opposite knee through to get through full hip extension. We move on to the second glute focus day, the one that's going to first appear on day 6, and here we're just going to make a slight difference. We're going to instead go for our activation in the standing position. We're going to do the toe up hip swing and the toe down hip swing. And for each of these, we're getting rotational stability. We're working the up leg and the down leg. I covered these in a specific video. I'll link these for you at the end here so you can see more of the details on what these will provide you, but these will actually help you to activate those glutes and get them awake for what's coming next, and that is the single leg version of the hip thrust. So now, why are we doing this? Because we want to expose those right and left imbalances. Remember, I had you do that test where you tried to do that hip extension right versus left, and you likely felt the difference. Well, here we want to make sure that we're not hiding anything. So by demanding that you do this single leg version of a hip thrust, we will find where those weaknesses are, and we're going to address them head on. Here you're going to go slightly lower on the reps, still 3 to 4 sets, this time of 8 reps on each leg. Which brings us to the second exercise, and this is one of my favorites. It's called the dumbbell frog press. And what you do is you take basically the weight that you used on the step-ups, you combine them, and that's what you're going to use in one dumbbell across your hips. And the key here is the position of the feet and legs in the exercise. You're not keeping your feet flat. Instead, you're leaning on the outside of your foot, externally rotating your hips, and now driving the movement not through the glute max, but through the glute medius. And I mentioned those really important muscles that oftentimes get overlooked. This is what I'm talking about. You want to make sure you're developing all the muscles of the hip if you want to round out, literally, the appearance of your butt. So we do this once again in 3 sets, 1 minute apiece, really trying to drive the intensity of the contraction and make sure you're feeling it in the right place, which is more on the outside of your hips. And we come into our last exercise here. Remember that quad focused exercise, and we're going for the low bar squat. And we know that the position of the bar on your back will dictate the position of your torso. The lower the bar gets, the more you're going to have to lean your body forward, and this will actually start to ignite and light up the backside for the same reason that it did on the leaning forward step-ups. Do 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps to round out this second workout. Which brings us now to those hamstring-driven glute-focused training days. And here we start with our foundational exercise of the basic RDL. And we know that this is now hamstring driven because we're getting that good pre-stretch on the hamstrings on every single repetition. But if you focus closely on how this happens, you really aren't trying to bend your knees very much. You just soften your knees and drive this primarily through a hip hinge. And through hip hinge, we get hip extension. And hip extension, we get glute development. Once again, driven by that pre-stretch of the hamstrings, so slightly shifting the focus, but not the overall impact of what we're trying to achieve. You do 3 to 4 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions, and you move on to the next exercise. And today we're doing something called the prone frog curl. No weights are needed here. You simply lay on your belly and you start by lifting your thighs up off the ground to ignite and activate those glutes again into hip extension. And while holding this position, bend your knees by bringing your feet closer to your butt. You'll start to feel this really light up and tighten up inside that glute medius and the rotators of the hip. I want you to do this for 3 sets of 1 minute apiece, resisting the burn, really trying to make sure that you don't allow the hips to lower even as you flex the knees and bring the feet closer to your butt. Drive up through hip extension and maintain that on each and every rep for the entire minute. Which brings us to the third exercise of the day, the one that's devoted to quads but has that indirect glute involvement as well, and it's a lunge. But it's a lunge variation, and it's all about the variation that gets this thing to work the way we want it to. This is called a curtsy lunge. So instead of dropping straight back and loading just the front quad up, we're gonna step back and across, creating an imbalance that will demand that we have control of the hips in the frontal plane, side to side. We know once we do that, we work on the control of the abductors of the hip, which wrap around into the glutes, tie in perfectly, and help to round out that development like I said before. You're gonna do 2 to 3 sets of 10 repetitions on each leg here to wrap up this workout. Which brings us to our fourth and final workout in our strength-based training days, and this is the second variation of our hamstring dominant day. This goes on day 8 and then continues to be repeated throughout the rest of the days. And here we start with the single leg version of the RDL. So we're still going for that same pattern. We're still relying on the activation of the hamstrings, which will drive hip extension, but we're gonna do it 1 leg at a time to one more time expose any imbalances you might have. We're gonna do 3 to 4 sets of 8 repetitions on each leg. Before we transition into maybe one of my favorite exercises of all time, and you can do it with just your own body weight. It's called the slick floor bridge curl. And all you have to do is get some socks and a slick floor like a hardwood or tile, and you're off and running. You get up into this good high bridge position and you try to keep it there the entire time as you allow your feet to start drifting out and away from you, lengthening at the hamstrings and straightening out the knee. You do 3 sets of 1 minute. Once again, don't let those hips drop even for a single second. Which brings us to our final exercise of the day, and this is the dumbbell Bulgarian split squat out of this sprinter position. What are we doing? Again, preloading the glutes by not just keeping our torso upright, but by leaning slightly forward to pre-activate the glutes and load them more favorably than the quads during this exercise. You do 2 to 3 sets of 10 on each leg to round out this workout. And that leaves us with just our 2 corrective workouts on each of those days, guys, just 2 exercises. The key is to perform each and every repetition as if it's the only one that you're doing. Remember, you're going for high quality contractions here to drive the mind-muscle connection with the glutes that's missing. And on the first day here, we have our reverse hyper paired up with something called a hip drop. And the reverse hyper, you simply position yourself on top of a bench. You're gonna drive your legs together and up into good hip extension, focusing on that good glute contraction. Again, 15 to 20 repetitions, good squeeze and hold at the top, lower down slowly. The hip drop, you're gonna focus on 1 leg at a time, and again, we're working now on that frontal plane, the abduction of the hip side to side. You stand on that foot outside the wall, and you allow your hips to get lazy and just relax and drop out. Now all you wanna do is slide them back towards the wall. At the same time, you're likely gonna lift up a little bit, so the hip that's closer to the wall will rise, but you get a really tight contraction in the leg that's on the ground and the outside of the hip if you're doing this right. Again, 15 to 20 repetitions, high focus on quality contractions, not just simply repping them out. The second corrective day has 2 exercises as well. The first one is the internal rotation hip lift. And this is an awkward one because people are extremely weak into internal rotation of the hip. And the way you do this is you get into this position here and you get your back leg at a 90-degree angle. Lean all of your body weight towards that front leg, and all you're trying to do is lift your hip up off the ground. Even if you can get it 3 or 4 inches, I'm happy. Many people will find that they can't lift it at all. If that's you, you need to work on the strength here, and you can actually cheat this a little bit by leaning more and more towards the direction of that forward leg. 15 to 20 repetitions on each leg, really going for those high quality contractions. And then we go for that last exercise, and this is called the fire hydrant. You've probably seen this one before, but with a slight tweak to make it even better. You get in this position, you externally rotate the hip this time as we lift up as if we're peeing on a fire hydrant, if you're into that sort of thing, and then you kick your leg back into extension with the leg rotated. You'll feel that tight contraction and squeeze once again in your outer glutes, if you're doing this properly. 3 sets of 15 to 20 on each leg to round out your training day. And so there you have it, guys, a 22-day game plan for building that butt of yours to getting better glute development, for either fueling better performance or simply looking better in the mirror. Remember, you're going to want to check out those gains in the mirror on day 22, and there's nothing stopping you from keeping those improvements coming. If you're looking to take it to the next level, guys, we have step-by-step plans designed to train you like an athlete, which means a lot of focus on building high-powered, high-performing lower bodies. You can find them all over at ATHLEAN-X.com. If you found the video helpful, make sure you leave your comments and thumbs up below. What else do you want to see me cover? I'll do my best to do that for you in the days ahead. And also, if you haven't already done so, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video when we put one out. All right, guys, no more ass knots, not after this video. Good luck, and let me know how you do. See you.